Energy. It's an essential part of life. In 2016, in the United States alone, we consumed 97.4 quadrillion British thermal units of energy. Meeting our energy demands is not an easy task. The debate on which types of energy resources are the best has been going on for decades. Some sides argue that non-renewable energy sources like coal and natural gas are the easiest and the best methods, while other sides argue that renewable energy like solar and wind are our planet's future. Currently, in the United States, our energy production is around 33% from natural gas, 28% from petroleum, 17% from coal, 12% from renewable energy sources, and 10% from nuclear power.
Coal. Coal remains the largest source of energy for the generation of electricity in the United States. But burning coal has consequences. Aside from releasing other pollutants, coal-fired electric plants are a major source of emissions of carbon dioxide, the most significant greenhouse gas in Earth's atmosphere.
Most people, including many environmental lawyers, don't know that the federal government owns vast amounts of fossil fuels. So about 40% of the coal that we burn to generate electricity comes from federally owned lands or federally owned minerals. So most of that coal comes from the western United States, principally from an area of Montana and Wyoming called the Powder River Basin.
The Powder River Basin in Montana and Wyoming produces approximately 40% of the coal used for electricity generated in the United States. These two mines represent 20% of the coal mined in the United States and account for 6% of the carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions. In Wild Earth Guardians versus U.S. Bureau of Land Management, two environmental groups, Wild Earth Guardians and the Sierra Club, challenged the Bureau of Land Management's issuance of 4 leases on federal public lands that would allow coal to continue to be mined at 2 of the largest coal mines in the Powder River Basin. The central claim in the lawsuit was that the Bureau of Land Management violated the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, by failing to properly analyze the potential impacts of the agency's leasing decision would have on global climate change. The environmental groups lost the claim in the district court in Wyoming, but they appealed to the 10th Circuit and prevailed. We spoke to representatives from both sides of the case to learn about its impact on climate change analysis and policy.
There is not a single example of where the Bureau of Land Management has ever rejected a coal lease because it was in an area that was too environmentally sensitive. Okay. That's not a thing that ever happened in the 100 years that we've had coal production on Western lands. All of these things build up over time, and so we are, every time we issue a coal lease, it basically gives the company 20 years to develop it. So if this administration leases another 5 billion tons of coal, that coal is going to come out of the ground. It's not as if there's going to be some future decision by the next administration that is going to that's going to wind that back.
I'm doing this interview in my personal capacity and not as a representative of the Department of Justice or the Department of the Interior. As they said, here is the amount of coal that we'll be leasing. We're going to assume all of that coal will be burned to generate electricity, and that all of the resulting greenhouse gas emissions will be released, which amounted to, I think, about 382 million tons per year over the life of these leases. And so they assumed all of that would be released into the atmosphere, and then they give a general discussion about climate change, the potential causes of climate change, the potential global effects. But they say when you get down into particular effects, it's difficult to say what any particular amount of greenhouse gas emissions will do to climate change, from any particular project will have over an extended time period, for the global climate.
Even under this administration, agencies don't want to be responsible for climate change.
Based on the fact that you have existing coal-fired power plants, an increased projection for demand, and reserves elsewhere, they said even if we didn't issue these leases, it wouldn't make a big enough difference. The word they used was consequential. It wouldn't make a consequential difference in the greenhouse gas emissions.
Take your 2 billion tons of coal, you multiply that times 1.569, and when you burn all of this coal, you're looking at 3.3 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Like, we're not going to stop climate change. What we can do is stave off the worst effects of climate change if we make decisions now.
Solar power is one renewable energy source that has a world of potential. Every hour, the Earth receives enough solar energy to meet the global energy demand for a whole year. In the US alone, the amount of solar energy that we receive roughly every half hour is equal to the amount of energy that fossil fuels produce in 1 year. However, this solar energy, for the most part, is not harnessed. If solar power were to be used more widely and efficiently, other energy sources may become obsolete.
There are two types of solar power, photovoltaic and concentrated. Photovoltaic, or PV, solar panels involve collecting energy directly from the sun. Panels, which hold multiple cells, contain a semiconductor, and when the panel is hit by sunlight, photons free electrons and therefore create an electrical current. Conductive metal plates located on the sides of cells have wires that the freed electrons are transferred to, and the electricity can then be transferred to wherever it is needed. Concentrated solar, on the other hand, relies on the reflection of solar energy to a focal point. While there are many different versions of concentrated solar power, a common trait is that they use mirrors to focus insolation on a certain point, creating heat that is then used to generate electricity. The focused solar energy heats a material with a high heat capacity, such as molten salt, and that heat is used to create steam to spin turbines, thereby generating energy. One example of concentrated solar is parabolic troughs, which use rotating curved mirrors to shine solar energy onto an oil-filled tube in front of the mirror. Another type is the power tower system that uses flat mirrors that track the sun to reflect solar energy onto a central receiver tower containing, for example, molten salt. Both PV and concentrated solar power have a lot of potential. For PV, as technology and efficiency of the panels improves, the price for them drops. PV panels can be placed anywhere from the tips of skyscrapers to the tops of road construction signs. A thinner version of PV cells can be used as shingles for the roofs of people's homes. Concentrated solar power is beneficial because the molten salt that is often used can store heat for long periods of time, and therefore electricity can still be generated on cloudy days and for a few hours after the sun sets. Currently, Europe holds half of global PV capacity. Germany alone generates about 40% of its total energy using solar power. However, the US, which receives more insolation than Germany on average, only meets 0.25% of its energy demand using solar.
Another renewable energy source with potential is wind power. Wind turbines are large structures with normally 3 spinning blades. As the wind blows, the blades, which are attached to a rotor, spin and turn a shaft that is attached to a generator, thus creating electricity. Wind turbines are generally located in fields of relatively flat land, but with new technology, they can also be located in water bodies. Wind power first became widely used in the United States in the early 1980s because of an oil shortage, which sparked interest in renewable energy. In the year 1990, the United States electricity generation from wind was a little less than 1%, but as of 2016, that number has risen to 6%. While wind power does have negative impacts, like killing birds and requiring service roads, it remains an emission-free energy source that has a relatively small physical footprint for each turbine.
While there are many options for renewable energy sources, the shift towards using mostly or all renewable energy will not be an easy one. Politics have a heavy influence over energy resources. Because coal and oil are priced so low, there is no economic incentive to shift away from using them. Many consumers are short-sighted and do not know proper information about the effects of certain energy sources, and therefore, as of right now, consumer discontent is not likely to cause any change. Through legal battles, new policies, and public outcry, we can only hope that the shift towards renewable energy will not be too late to diminish the adverse effects of climate change.